You can also consider that by investing in your people's professional growth, you're signaling this value that is going to then lend itself to enhanced morale, enhanced job satisfaction, and ultimately enhanced performance. Hey Thriver, as you, me, everybody knows, the talent landscape of today has dramatically shifted. Post-COVID, the way that we are working today is unlike any other time in most of our organizations. And so we're going to discuss today some topics that are core to really rethinking, redefining, redesigning, and reimagining the workforce, the workplace. And we're going to be discussing not just upskilling and reskilling, but really thinking about the undeniable power of career development roadmaps, particularly for women inside of organizations and also for professionals of color. So welcome to today's episode. I'm excited to dive into this topic with you because we are in an era that is marked with rapid technological changes, shifts in global dynamics, and evolving employee expectations that are very much dependent upon the generation and also the technology. So to paint an even clearer picture, I want to share some statistics with you that are top of mind for me that we often share at Career Thrivers with organizations to really help us to get a grasp on the breadth and depth of the current state, where we are today. So according to the World Economic Forum, by 2025, 50% of all employees will need, and the emphasis there is on the word need. So half of all employees at your company will need reskilling as a way to adapt to technological increases within the marketplace. And depending on when you're listening to this, that's like a year from now, maybe two, right? If we think about the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, their latest report in 2022 shared that the average tenure of employees was just 4.1 years, which is a stark difference from past generations where people held jobs for decades. I mean, I think about my dad. He retired from Nashville's electric service after more than 25, almost 30 years of service there, right? So what does that tell us when we think about the current workforce, right? There's a quest for growth. There is a quest for new opportunities and perhaps even an unmet need within the current roles for employees. Again, getting back to this idea of employee expectations and employer opportunities and strategies to address these changes. What else do we know to be true? Well, there is a study by Deloitte. It's the Global Human Capital Trends Report. And in that report, it showed that almost 80% of global executives rated reskilling the workforce, like this topic that we're talking about today, as important or very important, right? So when these executives around the world were ranking what matters most to them when it comes to their perspective of what's needed to do business, reskilling the workforce was important or very important. But there's a disparity because only 10% of that 79% is the exact number feel that they're very ready to address this need. So again, we are sitting in a current state where the marketplace is changing, employee expectations are changing, reskilling the workforce is a priority, but there's a disparity in leaders feeling like they're ready to address that. You know, my favorite platform, LinkedIn, right? If you looked at LinkedIn's data, their 2022 workforce learning report, it's a phenomenal report that I highly encourage you to check out. Inside of that report, it indicates that 94% of employees would stay longer if their company invested in their career development. I want you to just take that in for a minute. If you couple that with this data around the average tenure is 4.1 years, right, of today's workforce, the average working professional, 9 out of 10, 94% of employees said that they would stay longer at their company if their company invested in their career development. So the writing's on the wall. Professional development isn't just a perk. It is an expectation of today's workforce. And here's a startling revelation in all of this, right? Gartner found that the number of skills that are required for a single job, most people would say they're doing at least 2 to 3 jobs, right? Like if you dig into the weeds and have conversations, right, you might relate to that as well. You're like, yeah, Brittany, I can relate to that. My job description says one thing, but when I look at all that I'm doing, like I'm at least doing the role of at least 2 people, right? But Gartner found that the number of skills that are required for a single job is increasing by 10% year over year. And 1/3 of the skills that are present in an average 2017 job posting will be irrelevant by 2025. So this shows the urgency, right? And the importance of continuous learning, of evolving the skill set of your people and adapting to the current needs of really the economy, right? Not only the workforce, right, in business, but just the way our economy is moving by leaps and bounds and the marketplace is moving by leaps and bounds, largely due to technology. And if we throw AI into the mix, the impact of AI on the workforce is moving even faster, right? So although we know that these numbers, when we look at these numbers, the narrative is clear, right? We still know that the workforce is in flux and people are eager. They're eager to learn. They're eager to grow. They're eager to adapt. So the question for business leaders, for leaders of leaders, for leaders of organizations is, are we facilitating this growth? Or an even better question might be, how are we facilitating this growth? Now, upskilling and reskilling are 2 terms that have really gained prominence over these last few years. I would say, since the pandemic, really, we've been talking and hearing more about upskilling and reskilling in the corporate world, especially, and in the context of the technology field, absolutely, right? When we look at how the market is evolving by technological advancements, by globalization, by shifting economic dynamics, right? We're hearing this need for upskilling and reskilling. So I thought we would dive into to a little bit of like, what is it? So let's like level the playing field. If you are new to the show, then you're like, okay, what are these definitions? But if you've been around for a few episodes, then I don't like to assume that we are all speaking the same language, even if we're using the same words. So upskilling refers to this process of teaching employees a new skill or enhancing their existing skill set to keep up with the demand of their current roles and of the current business, right? So it looks like adding new competencies or expanding your own knowledge base within a particular domain. So let's take, for example, if a graphic designer learns how to use a newly released design software, right? Or a more advanced tool that maybe has AI integrated and is now delivering suggestions on design, right? That improves their workflow, that makes them more efficient and probably even more effective in the work that they're doing. That is an example of upskilling. Okay. Then we hear about reskilling. So reskilling is around training employees, right? And training them not for the work that they're currently doing, but training them for entirely new roles or careers, right? And often this is required because the existing role is becoming more and more obsolete or less in demand. Okay. So when you hear companies that are talking about reskilling, what they're really preparing for is 5 to 10 years down the road, knowing that their business is going to change, right? So this is especially relevant in industries that have been disrupted by technology or other external factors. So like we have some Career Thrivers partners, clients, we call our clients partners, that are massively entrenched in reskilling because they're adding new lines of business. Like they're literally creating startups within a more traditional business model context. So the need for a completely different set of skills is there, but instead of trying to find these new skills with new people, they're reskilling their current workforce, right? So another example is if a bank teller whose role has maybe become redundant due to digital banking solutions is trained to now become a customer service representative handling digital inquiries, right? That would be an example of being reskilled to meet the new need. Same employee, same organization, same industry, but the role has now evolved, right? So if you think about upskilling, if you think about reskilling as, okay, either you might see this happening in your organization right now, or likely, if you're tuned into this episode, you are a leader of leaders or a leader of an organization that is in the midst of implementing strategies around these two things. I want to share with you some companies that have done it well, right? So you might be asking yourself, okay, Brittany, I hear you. Yes, we're in the thick of this right now. What are some examples where upskilling and reskilling are currently happening and looking to be really profitable for their business? So the first example that comes to mind is Amazon, right? So in 2019, Amazon announced a $700 million initiative to upskill 100,000 of their US employees by 2025. All right. So the core of the program offers things like training in areas of software engineering, data mapping, machine learning, reflecting skills that, as you may assume, are in high demand with the company as well as the broader market, right? So they made this significant investment in their people. AT&T is another example. So again, because of this current digital revolution that we're in, AT&T embarked on this massive workforce transformation initiative, and they called it their Future Ready program, right? So the company set out to reskill again 100,000 employees. So again, I want to put a pin here. We are not talking about attracting and recruiting talent. We are sharing examples and walking through examples of companies that have made additional investments in their current employees. So with these 100,000 employees at AT&T, they provided them with technical and soft skills. Now, if you know anything about Career Thrivers, we believe those are power skills, right, that are needed for the jobs of the future. Another big box example of an organization that you will be well aware of is Walmart. Right. So Walmart is a retail giant that we all know. They've made significant investments in training their current workforce. Right. And they have taken more of an academies approach. Right. So they offer both classroom and in-store training to employees that are focusing on technology, soft or power skills, right, in areas that are going to help, again, their current employees advance their career. Now, I know I'm spending some time here, but I think it's important that you know that there are many examples out there across many different industries of what this looks like. So Nestle is another example. Nestle, like many others, have been ahead of the curve. So in 2019, they announced a collaboration with General Assembly. General Assembly is a fast-growing skills academy, right? And what Nestle decided to do was to reskill their employees, again, in areas like data analysis, machine learning, technical project management. You're seeing this trend, right, of helping their current workforce become more technologically savvy. And the last example that I'll share with you is an organization. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's on my dream list of partners for Career Thrivers. We're getting there, making some inroads, but it's JP Morgan Chase. And under their $350 million new skills at work initiative, the financial giant is working to prepare the future of their workforce by investing in training their current employees. Again, they are training them in skills that are focused on their digital competencies, so technical capabilities, soft or power skills as well. So these companies have recognized this importance of continuous learning in order to stay competitive, right? So by investing in upskilling or reskilling their current workforce, they're not only ensuring that their workforce remains relevant, right? But they're also signaling massively to their employees their commitment to their growth and development. And you can just imagine, without me saying it, what this does for retention. So speaking of, let's talk a little bit about retention, right? Because it is the pipeline problem that many organizations overlook. Often when we hear about, oh, we have a challenge with our pipeline, most leaders, when they say that, they're talking about attracting and recruiting talent, right? But at Career Thrivers, what we often observe is the biggest pipeline problems are the leaky pipe and the clogged pipe, right? The leaky pipe meaning they're leaving, the clogged pipe meaning your diverse talent is all at the entry-level positions, right? So replacing an employee, it's expensive. It can cost anywhere from 50% to 250% of that person's annual salary, depending on the level of leadership that they are in the organization. And here's the thing, right? It's not just about the financial cost, but it's also about lost potential, right? Particularly for women and professionals of color, right? There are unique challenges there that make retention even more critical. So if we take a look at some of the more multi-layer costs of turnover, right, we can see that attrition has implications across in organizations of all sizes, right? So whether you're listening in and you are part of a startup, or whether you are an executive leader at a mid-sized organization or a Fortune 50 company, right? The ramifications aren't just financial, but they also include an impact on morale. Turnover impacts productivity. It impacts your organizational knowledge, right? So when we're looking at the financial impact of turnover, and we'll take that one first because I know that's what, again, we often think of. And those percentages, I shared a wide range there, but let's just talk about an average, right? So on average, it costs a company 33% of an employee's annual salary to replace them if they leave, voluntary or involuntary, right? So every time, you can do the math, right? Every time someone leaves the organization, it's 33% of their salary to replace them. Now, this figure accounts for many things, right? So you may be thinking like, okay, well, maybe you're listening in and you're thinking, well, Brittany, I'm not in the HR space, or, I don't work in talent development. I'm not as familiar. So the figure accounts for the recruiting process. It accounts for training and onboarding. It accounts for the loss of productivity during the period that you are actually looking to fill the role, right? And there are even other hidden expenses within that. So for higher level of executives, this number can soar to, again, up to 250% of that leader's annual salary. So you might be thinking, well, percentages, I can kind of see it, maybe not. Let's talk dollars then. Let's talk dollars and cents, okay? So for an employee that has a median salary, let's just say an employee in Nashville, Tennessee has a $45,000 a year salary, right? And if they leave the organization, this translates to a potential turnover cost of $15,000. So again, you do the math. Every time someone leaves, it's like dollars going out the window, 15,000 of them per employee. Now, if you take a look at the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average annual turnover rate across all industries, right? So this is industry agnostic in the U.S. In 2019, it was around 57%. So when you think about what's average and how your organization is doing comparatively, right? That's one metric to compare, but also just know that that figure varies by sector and by industries, right? So just know that this figure varies by sector, it varies by industry. And if you think of industries like hospitality as an example, traditionally that's an industry that experiences higher turnover rates. So you want to be really dialed into your industry metrics for turnover. When we look at, so we talked about the financial impact of turnover. Let's talk about some of the productivity and morale implications. So organizations with high turnover rates can see a significant drop in their productivity, right? If you think about the average new hire, it takes usually up to 5 to 6 months to become fully productive. And this is with the, most brilliant talent that has experience doing the work, right? But they have to come in and learn your culture and learn your team and learn your clients and your systems and processes, right? So typically it's 5 to 6 months before they're fully up to speed. Meanwhile, hey Thriver, I'm excited for you to get your hands on your copy of the Blueprint to More Visibility and Influence. This is a powerful free resource that's designed to catapult your influence and amplify your impact in your business or company. Now, this isn't just another online guide. This is your strategic companion that's going to walk you through the world of personal branding and authentic leadership. Inside, you'll unlock essential strategies that are going to help you do a few things. One, sharpen your self-awareness and own your unique story, navigate the complexities of workplace dynamics with more confidence, elevate your presence in any room, and ensure that you are not only seen, but also heard and valued. Why wait for opportunities when you can create them? With this blueprint, you'll learn how to cultivate a personal brand that commands respect and opens the door for new opportunities. And the best part, you'll start seeing the world differently, not just as a place where you fit in, but one where you stand out. You'll transform your self-doubt into more self-assurance and turn your aspirations into tangible achievements. So join me in our community of thrivers who are making their mark. Don't let this moment pass you by. Head on over to letsThriveTogether.com to download your free copy of the Blueprint to More Visibility and Influence today. Start your journey and let's thrive together. If you think about existing employees, right, during that time period, they're likely burdened, right, with an increased workload and also the stress of constant change on their team. We had a recent experience with this with a client where we were brought in to do some diversity, equity, and inclusion work, but we quickly realized, because of the size of the company, it was very clear that the challenge wasn't in them being able to attract or recruit diverse talent. They had a problem with retaining that talent. There was on average one person leaving the organization every month. Over a 12-month period, 11 people had left the organization. And so when you have that kind of turnover, right, that's a smaller scale, your organization might be bigger, but it definitely impacts the team morale. And consistent exits like that can really foster a sense of instability, dissatisfaction, burnout, right, on the remaining team members, which prompts even more departures. So you find yourself in this cycle of attrition or turnover, HR language for turnover, that's hard to stop. And what we know from a talent management and organizational culture perspective is that is usually a sign of an opportunity for leadership development and addressing the culture of the organization, right? And so we can perhaps talk about that on another episode, but when we dig into the weeds of why people leave at particularly those faster paces, when attrition gets really high, right, there's usually a leadership development and a culture issue that's there. So when you think about when someone leaves, they're taking their invaluable institutional knowledge right out the door with them. And it's hard to replace that, right? Even if, again, you have someone that's really talented that comes in, right? That loss of tacit knowledge and expertise can really hinder project completion. It can hinder client delivery. It can hinder innovation as well. So when you're thinking about some of those indirect costs, right, you also have to think about things like, customer and client relationships when employees leave, right? The departure can influence customer satisfaction and customer loyalty. One of the things that isn't often included in the costs around turnover is that institutional knowledge of the customer, right? I have a gentleman in my head right now who was the most senior team member at an organization that we were working with that decided to leave the organization, and literally he was the face of that organization, right? When customers came in, when their clients came through the door, and when I say the face, it wasn't just that he was, always front and center on every panel, on every mic, in all of the marketing. It wasn't that, but it was the fact that he had such deep knowledge of the clients, that there was a level of trust that he had created over his time being there, that when people thought about the organization, they thought about him, right? And that kind of connection is hard to replace. Again, even if you've got brilliant talent coming in the door, it takes time to recoup that. And sometimes those are hidden costs that we aren't thinking about. So we have to be mindful also about how high turnover can tarnish an organization's reputation in the job market, which makes it hard to attract top talent. At Career Thrivers, we don't do recruiting work, but we often work with organizations around their employer brand so that they do a better job of attracting the kind of talent that they're looking for, particularly when it comes to women and professionals of color. And one thing that can tarnish that sometimes employees that are inside of the organization don't see, is the reputation, right? How word has gotten out about the company. And it can be hard to turn that around, particularly within diverse communities. So when we look at some of the reasons why people leave, right? According to Gallup, about 7 out of 10, let me say it a different way. About 75% of the reason for costly employee turnover is preventable. Right. So this culture, this leadership development, these career pathways, right? The same study found that managers account for 70% of the variation in employee engagement scores. So it brings up in my mind this line that we hear often, that people don't leave companies, they leave leaders, they leave managers, right? So poor management can be a significant driver of turnover. Again, it's something that we don't often address head on, but it is a huge barrier to retention, right? So it's clear that when we're thinking about the cost of turnover, it's not merely a financial concern, right? But it's this comprehensive challenge that affects your organization's productivity, your culture, and your reputation, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, investing in employee retention strategies, it isn't just a good thing to do or a good thing to have, but it is a business imperative. So when we think about even some of the companies that I listed as being great examples of upskilling and reskilling, right? Businesses that engage in upskilling and reskilling, they experience that improved productivity, that improved innovation, and the competitive edge within their industry, right? So for employees, this equates to having renewed job enthusiasm, right? Security, growth opportunities. And this is paramount for women and for professionals of color, right? And this is why our traditional mindsets and approaches to diversity, equity, and inclusion are sometimes short-termed and short-lived. They aren't sustainable because we aren't thinking about them from the perspective of a business imperative, right? We're thinking about them as a one-off, as a side shoot, as a, response to current social dynamics. And it's like, no, this is rolled into talent management. It's folded into leadership development. It's folded into our workforce development approach so that we reach that innovation, we reach that productivity, and we reach that profitability, right? So when we think about the power of career development roadmaps as you're upskilling and reskilling talent, a career development roadmap really offers the direction, clarity, and motivation for employees, right? It signals an organization's investment in their people, right? We often hear, people are a company's greatest assets, but employees, especially again, women and professionals of color, they feel valued, they feel seen, right? They know that there is a clear sense of belonging at the organization when they see those progression opportunities that are tailored for them. So when you think about a career development roadmap, it's essentially a visual representation of an individual's career journey that really highlights those pathways for growth, right? So learning opportunities, key milestones. And I think this is important to hone in on, because sometimes when leaders hear career pathways, they automatically think financial promotion, in terms of salary. That is a part of it, but it's not the only part. And sometimes it's not even the most important part, depending on who you're talking to, right? So it's not only about this vertical progression, but it's also about how do you broaden the knowledge and the skills of your people. And here's why that's important, right? It's important because the roadmap, having one, mapping it out, sitting down, bringing in a partner, getting strategic about it, it's going to bring clarity and direction, right? And so it's going to help your employees to really visualize having a runway at your organization, having a path for growth at your organization. It's going to show the steps that are needed, the skills that need to be honed, and the milestones that need to be reached for progression, so that when your people leaders are in their one-on-one conversations, their mid-year reviews, their end-of-the-year reviews, they have a framework to fall back on to provide actionable performance-based feedback for your people. And that's an entirely different conversation that we can have on another episode about feedback and people leaders being better about giving actionable performance-based feedback, right? But having a career roadmap is one of the ways that people leaders are empowered with the resources and the tools that they need, right? Career roadmaps also provide empowerment for employees. Employees feel a sense of control in their career trajectory when they know that, hey, I've got a defined path here, right? When they know how to reach their next level, what that looks like. And again, it doesn't have to be a set way or the only way, but you're showing them that, hey, there is a way for you to grow and thrive at our organization. That leads to increased engagement, right? A clear progression pathway is going to signify that your company is invested in that employee's future with you, with your company, right? That builds a sense of loyalty and fosters engagement. I mean, you want to talk about a strategy for recruiting talent, develop and cultivate, and I'm thinking in my head, an army of people, right? But a workforce that is being poured into, that's being developed, that's being guided in terms of how they can grow at your company, and they become the evangelists, right? Career roadmaps are also powerful for skill alignment with the organization's goals, right? So you want to take a strategic approach to your roadmaps and design them to align someone's growth with where the company has strategic objectives, right? To ensure that that person's development is also furthering the company's goals, okay? So as you're thinking about your investment, right, and really leveraging your investment in professional development to retain and engage your talent, I want you to think about a few things, right? One, think about offering robust professional development opportunities as a way to, again, significantly point and show that, yes, you are an organization that is investing in your people, which makes you more attractive to job seekers, right? So it's an incredible tool to attract top talent. It's also an incredible way to enhance skill sets. Again, we've shared about this, but having this approach to continuous learning is going to keep your employees updated. It's going to ensure that they're moving with the pace of the market. They're moving with the pace of the industry trends. They're moving with the pace of best practices, right? AI needs to be a prominent conversation within the learning and development department at your organization. How is your organization preparing your people for the way AI is dramatically changing how we do business? You can also consider that by investing in your people's professional growth, you're signaling this value that is going to then lend itself to enhanced morale, enhance job satisfaction, and ultimately enhance performance. And then last but not least, it'd be the obvious why. It's going to help you to reduce turnover, right? So those turnover statistics that we talked about, employees are less likely to look for opportunities elsewhere if they feel that they can grow and achieve their career goals at your company. So if there's a pathway for them to do that and you've mapped that out and made that visually clear to them and then provided people leaders with that tool to give them a resource for how to communicate about performance with their people, your turnover costs, both directly financially and those indirect costs that we talked about that are related to hiring and retraining as well, are going to be reduced, right? And then I know I said that was the last thing, but I also want you to consider that this is going to help you to build a stronger leadership pipeline, right? So when you have consistent professional development, you're not only pouring into your people for the sake of being able to pat yourself on the back, but you are also preparing your emerging leaders to take on leadership roles, right? You're ensuring that the organization has a strong internal pool of candidates for managerial positions as they open up and as they grow within your organization. So, as we've discussed, the business world is definitely dynamic. I mean, when you think about the traditional approaches to professional development, there's room for change. There's room for growth, right? There's room for reinvention. But having this consistent approach is going to ensure that employees can adapt to the changes in the marketplace and in your business in a way that meets the goals of your organization. And as your people are developing new skills, becoming more efficient in their role, driving better performance, becoming more productive, whether they are working at home remotely or whether they are working in your office, it's going to drive your business forward. So as we wrap up, right, for leaders who are leveraging the power of career development roadmaps, investing in your people, and investing even in your own professional development, I want you to keep in mind that, again, this isn't just about individual growth, right? Your mindset around the team member that brings a proposal to attend a conference or take a course or, to invest in their skill development because perhaps your company is still building out a career pathways program. This isn't just about that team member. It's a strategic move that drives organizational success. In this rapidly evolving business landscape, fostering continuous learning and development isn't only necessary to staying relevant, but it's also a way that you as a leader of people, that you as a leader of leaders, and definitely you as an organizational leader are going to build a loyal, engaged, high performing workforce that you retain, right? That isn't leaving your organization. So if there's any way that we at Career Thrivers can be a partner in your success, as you look to do that, please, please, please reach out to us. We share a lot about the importance of retaining women and retaining professionals of color. And many of the partners that we work with have goals and commitments around that and are still very much aligned to and committed to seeing employees of all backgrounds thrive within their organization. And when we're thinking about women, especially, there's a plethora of data out there in terms of what that looks like, right? And how to continue to be strategic in how you're retaining talent. If you are a leader that's listening in to this episode and you have not tuned in or taken a look at the Lean In and McKinsey Women in the Workplace study, I highly, highly encourage you to take a look at it, right? Especially if you do have a commitment, and you wouldn't be listening to the show if you didn't, if you have a commitment to building a more inclusive workplace. Their most recent study looked at even deeper than their 2021, the intersectional impact of women that work in corporate organizations, and made clear that clear paths for advancement help to retain not only all women, but especially women at the intersection of race, ethnicity, and sexual orientation. So women of color, Black women, and women in the LGBTQIA plus community, right? And this is important because for every 100 men that are promoted to managerial roles, only 85 women are promoted or make the cut. And if you look even deeper, for Latina women, that number drops to 71. So 71 out of 100. And for Black women, it's a mere 58, right? So if you're thinking about, how do we retain women and how do we take an intersectional approach to retaining and advancing women? Having a supportive environment that prioritizes mentorship and career development and having a career pathway, right, moves beyond buzzwords to really being a backbone for building a thriving and diverse workforce. And we've seen companies transform by adopting an inclusive approach to upskilling, reskilling, and having a career roadmap. We've seen companies drop their turnover and increase their retention by 30%, right? By introducing career pathways, particularly tailored ones to those specific groups. So now is the time. Now is the time to act. And it starts by identifying those skills gaps, creating collaborative plans, right? Having the right stakeholders at the table to really think about what does this look like, and then integrating inclusivity in every aspect of your approach, every aspect of your program. And again, I would always encourage you to leverage tech tools, leverage reporting, right, to design these career pathways, these programs, and the assessment of them in a way that makes these resources accessible, right, to a diverse workforce, but also gives you an opportunity to assess, right, their impact. All right. So yes, there are hurdles. Yes, the business is changing rapidly. There's a lot to do, but understanding and championing these challenges that are unique to today's work environment and building a plan that provides you a way to say, hey, we've already invested millions into our current employees. We don't want to lose them. And in fact, as we look to new lines of business, we want to develop them to be ready for future iterations of our business. So now is the time. It's an ongoing process. Invest in upskilling, invest in reskilling, invest in career road mapping, and watch the long-term ROI be impressive and spur you to continue that investment in your people. My name is Brittany N. Cole, CEO and founder of Career Thrivers. If we can be a partner in your success in any way, make sure that you reach out to us. And again, as always, if you have enjoyed this episode, make sure that you share it. This is an important one for leaders at Career Thrivers. We have 4 levels of leadership. So everyone's a leader because first you're a leader of self, right? So personal leadership is the first level. The second level is being a leader of people, meaning you have direct reports. The third level is being a leader of leaders, meaning that you lead leaders that have direct reports. And then our fourth and final level is being an organizational leader, meaning that you're looking forward to the future innovation of your organization. And guess what? That future when it comes to workforce development is here. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Hey Creative is a company that stands at the intersection of imagination and reality here in Nashville, Tennessee. They specialize in transforming events into memorable experiences as partners for brands and advocates for small businesses. At Career Thrivers, we've been a proud client of Hey Creative as they foster self-reflection, promote growth, and create moments that are beautiful and inspiring. Experience the magic of Hey Creative today by visiting heyheycreative.com.